Raven Steals the Light, a story of the Inuit people in northern North America. In the time before Raven made the stars, and before Tupilak stole the moon and the sun, everyone lived on this side of the sky. Tupilak was a magician with a high cone hat and shoes that allowed him to walk miles in a single step. Raven lived in his cozy snow hut at the edge of the village. One harsh winter, when the snow froze the very earth, Tupilak put on his high cone hat and his magic shoes. He walked up to the sky and used his power to cut a hole in it. Then he climbed through and built himself a house on the other side. His wife argued with him. "What are you doing?" she cried. "All our friends are on this side of the sky. If we live on the other side, you will be completely alone." "You can go back and visit," he assured her. "I don't want to visit. I want to be here, right next to everyone and everything. I don't want to live alone." "What do you mean, live alone?" said Tupilak. "You will be living with me, and we'll have children, and the whole thing will be much more comfortable. Everyone else will want to visit you." "But no one has your magic, Tupilak. They won't be able to come." "Oh, probably some of them do," he said, and persisted in his plan. He carried from the first world all his magical tools. His wife, sighing with resignation, carried a stash of frozen seal meat. After they had settled as best they could, and even had a beautiful daughter, Tupilak could see that his wife was still sad and dissatisfied. In order to please her, he decided to steal the light. He climbed back through the hole in the sky and walked in his magic shoes straight to the top of the sky. Then into each of 2 strong bags, wrapping the necks of the bags tight with sinew rope, he crammed the moon and the sun. He pushed the bags back through the hole and hooked them high on the ceiling of his house, letting out the light only when he chose to do so. Now the world on this side of the sky had no light at all. Because Raven loved to sleep, he hardly noticed at first. Whenever he awoke and saw that it was still dark, he snuggled back into his black feathered coat and slept again. He dreamed of steaming globs of fat and collecting bright new treasures and of turning breathtaking somersaults. But the people on the side of the sky were puny and tired with lack of light and food. They didn't even have the strength to wonder anymore where Tupilak and his wife had gone. Finally, the people came to Raven and called weakly at his door. His dreams interrupted, Raven immediately thought of Tupilak. He picked his way through the horde of the shiny things he'd already found and poked his head out. "Raven, the sun never comes out anymore, and there's no moon either. We're running out of food." Raven heard the despair in their voices. "I'll bet Tupilak's behind all this," he muttered. Out loud, he promised the people that he would try to find the sun. "And the moon," they said. "The moon, too," he assured them. A pretty puzzle, thought Raven. This is going to be a long journey. So he took as big a bag of food as he could carry, and in another bag, several good-sized rocks. Then, increasingly roused at the idea of outwitting Tupilak, Raven pulled down his beak, drew on his black-winged coat, and soared into the freezing night sky. Whenever he needed to rest, Raven dropped a rock from his pack into the endless dark waters below. The rock changed to an island on which Raven could perch, gobbling down suppers, huddled in his warm feather coat until he was ready to fly again. Finally, he came to the hole in the sky made by Tupilak's magic. When Raven stepped through, he found himself dazzled by the sunlight on the other side of the hole, for Tupilak had let the sun out of its bag for the day. The sky was blue, a pool of water glistened, plants poked green, red, and pink from brown earth. Raven saw Tupilak in the distance, unmistakable in his high cone hat, soaking up the yellow heat. Raven coughed. Tupilak squinted. Is that you, Raven? None other, said Raven. What do you want? Said Tupilak. The sun and the moon. Tupilak laughed. Not a chance, Raven. They're mine now. You're a thief, said Raven calmly. Takes one to know one, grinned Tupilak, stuffed the sun back into its bag. I'm going to get them back, Tupilak, yelled Raven into the darkness. Tupilak let out the moon and the sun several times while Raven, munching and dozing, cast about with one idea and then another, trying to form a plan. Then, in the midst of the sunshine, Raven was startled by the appearance of a strong, round, lovely-cheeked maiden making her way down to the pool with a water jug in her hand. Could this be Tupilak's wife? Could she possibly have grown younger in all this light? Ah, no, it must be their daughter. In fact, she carried herself with the confidence of a magician's child. Raven blinked, and all at once he knew his trick. He quickly balled up his black-winged coat, pushed it under a rock, and turned himself into a tiny feather floating on the still pool. Tupilak's daughter sat dreamily at the pool's edge. Raven Feather trembled with expectation. He had a long time to wait, however, because the young woman sang softly to herself, bathed her feet and face in the pool, and musing and sighing combed out her long black hair. But she dipped her jug, and Raven swirled himself inside it. His heart leapt with the perfection of the moment when the woman took from its lip a deep quaff before beginning her walk home. Jubilantly, Raven Feather slipped down her throat. His plan was working. Some time later, Tupilak's daughter gave birth to a huge baby boy, whose mother, grandmother, and grandfather were overjoyed. All the pent-up tenderness of these three, alone for so long on the other side of the sky, they poured into the new little boy who, unbeknownst to them, was Raven in disguise. His mother nursed him and played with him. His grandmother doted on him. Tupilak adored him. Raven, inside his baby form, was careful to cry and pester for lots of things so his family would get used to giving him exactly what he wanted. He bided his time, however, before he asked for the bags of light that hung from the ceiling. One day his mother noticed a bump on the baby's forehead. "Oh, you've fallen, little one." She crooned and nuzzled him and pressed ice to the bump. Raven knew that his beak was beginning to bulge and he didn't have much more time. Very soon after, he cried for the moon bag on the ceiling. "Shh, baby, shh, that's Grandpa's bag," said the mother. And she dandled tasty morsels before him. Raven, of course, ate them ravenously. Pleased that her child was eating so well, she bounced him on her knee, calling forth raucous laughter from her round little boy. But soon he again began to wail, waving his chubby little hands upward, pouring out rivers of tears. This time grandmother fed him, changed him, and played the bouncing game, but always his sobbing began again, his mouth gasping for air between the heaves of his chest, and his little finger pointing at the bag with the moon inside. "Papa's out," said Tupilak's daughter to her mother. "Let's let him have it. What can it hurt? It's tied tightly enough." Tupilak's wife rolled her eyes. It would serve him right anyway if the thing got out. So Raven, hiccuping with joy, was given the moon bag to play with. In seconds, the little boy's face looked round and placid as the moon itself. His mother and grandmother rocked back on their heels, enjoying the sweet silence and happiness of their little seal pup. The minute their attention wandered, however, Raven unknotted the sinew, sure as if he had beak and claws, clapping and screeching as the moon sailed out, bouncing through the smoke hole like a ball of blubber. Tupilak came rushing back to the house when he saw the moon rolling through the tear in the sky. "Who touched my bag?" he bellowed, but stopped short when his wife and daughter pointed to the baby. who had ceased chortling long enough to emit a shriek of joy upon seeing his grandfather. "Dada," he called, and reached for Tupilak's old spotted hand. Tupilak's face softened like a long-cooked stew. The baby cooed and patted his grandfather while Tupilak beamed with pride. The two women looked at each other and shook their heads. Raven wisely waited before he cried for the sunbag to play with. Then, when Tupilak had settled, snoring into a nap, he began his earnest howling, waving his hands as if trying to pull down the sunbag. Tupilak woke up. "Oh, give him anything he wants," he groaned. "Just make him be quiet." The two women shrugged and pulled down the sunbag. With tooth and muscle, they wrapped and knotted the sinew twice more. Their closure was so effective that Raven this time could not open the bag. Knowing he must act quickly, he rested regretful eyes for a moment on his mamma's back, and then sped, bag and fist, out the door. He raced to his rock, donned the black wing cape he had hidden so long before. His beak plunged through his forehead, and Raven took bird form once again. Grasping the sunbag, first in his beak and then in claws, he dove through the hole in the sky and streaked away to the people, who his eyes had grown accustomed once again to the light of the moon, but who had still lived without the light of the sun. Raven felt hunger pains as he flew. On he flapped, but his stomach growled for food. By the time Raven spied the people below fishing in the crooked river by the light of the moon, his wings were trembling with effort. "Gah, gah," croaked Raven weakly. "Give me some fish." "Get your own fish, Raven," said the people. "We have hardly enough for ourselves." "Please," begged Raven, "I'll let out the daylight." "You don't have daylight, Raven," said the people, forgetting that they themselves had asked him to bring the sun. Raven cawed with exasperation. He dropped the sunbag, and with his remaining strength he rammed at it 3 times, pecking tiny holes out of which sizzled particles of the sun tumbling into the sky as sparkling spinning stars. "He does have something in his bag," exclaimed the people, and they rushed to get Raven some fish. Raven gorged and sucked every bone slick. Full of power, he tore open the bag, and out exploded the sun, while people screamed and covered their eyes. In a very short time, they were able to bear again this incredible light, and gratefully prepared for Raven an enormous feast. On the other side of the sky, Tupilak and his family mourned. Some say they got so lonely they came back to this side of the sky. Others say if they came at all, it was to steal the light again. But Tupilak has never been able to take the light for as long as he did that first time. Whenever it disappears and returns again, whenever people watch the moon roll into the sky among the bits of sun that are the stars, they think of Raven, and whenever they hear a baby crying, they remember Raven's trick on Tupilak.